Damn, son, where'd you find this?
People don't be offended by the truth. They be offended because you called out the truth. Simple as that. They don't want to hear any other narrative that makes them look bad.
One thing I can't stand at this big grown age is somebody who act like cause and effect does not exist. Like, yes, your actions caused this outcome. Yes, what you did lit the match. Like, why are you surprised and playing victim?
Guys, Chico, they never lie.
That's how you know somebody doesn't respect you. They listen to reply, not to be understood. They cut you off. They minimize what actually matters to you. They laugh at your boundaries, and then they call you sensitive when you try to hold the line. They show up late, they cancel last minute, forget the things you've told them, because in their world, your time, your energy, even your voice aren't a priority. They're just an option. You see, there are two kinds of people. Those who adjust when they realize they've actually hurt you, and those who expect you to adjust so they don't have to change. You don't need to be disrespected loudly to be disrespected deeply. Sometimes you'll see it. It's just in their tone, in their patterns, in the silence after you're known. Respect isn't what they say when they're watching. It's how they act when they think you'll tolerate it.
Yo, 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 yo. Good evening, folks. Peace and blessings, glory, praise, and honor to the Most High. I hope all is well. Happy Tuesday. Greetings from my side of the internet to your side of the internet. I want to say thank you for being here with us this evening. Shout outs to my poets, my producers, my writers, my artists, my painters, my dancers. Keep grinding. Keep putting your foot on that neck. We got a good show for y'all tonight. I'm excited. Do me a solid, like, share, repost, let the people know that we are on. I got my partner in the building. Hold on 1 second. We about to get active. You hear me? Make sure you give him a warm welcome. Yeah, I got a clip I'm gonna play, and we're gonna talk about some stuff, man. So get comfortable, grab you something to snack on, something to drink, and give a warm welcome for Coach Trill. Hold up. Yo, what up?
Yo, what's up, man? Appreciate you. That was man, that intro was dope. And I like the intro to the pod too, man. Great work on that.
Appreciate it, man. I've been having some. This is the original one. I've been kind of going back and forth with what I'm gonna keep. I might just hold on to this one for a little while longer until I actually come across what I can actually use YouTube and its guidelines and all that stuff, man. It's a whole bunch, but I'm glad to have you here, man.
Hey, glad to be here, man. Glad to be here. Is it just us, or we got some more people showing up tonight?
It's gonna be us tonight, man. I got some stuff that I'm trying to get together. The pieces ain't piecing yet, but okay. we getting there. We getting there.
Gotta start somewhere, man. It's all good.
Yeah. Shout out to Rob, Sydney. I do have a couple folks that I gotta chop it up with here this week. So we do have somebody joining us on Thursday, so that's gonna be interesting. But yeah, I got a clip for us, man. I don't think this gets talked about enough,
Okay.
and I would love to hear your feedback on it. I'm gonna give my thoughts on it, and we'll see where it go from there.
All right, let's do it.
Sometimes you're learning that everything doesn't need a response. And unfortunately, from someone who gets very defensive, someone who has trouble letting things go, that is hard for me to hear. It's like you see it on different things. You hear people telling you this. Of course, you see it on the TikTok. But it's so hard because it's like you be hearing people say stuff and it's like, nah, this wasn't right. Like, what do you mean? And do you feel like you have to defend yourself? And sometimes you'll get into that thing where you might even over explain. And it's like you don't really have to explain anything. You don't have to over explain. Maybe like just tell them like, hey, so what's up with that? What's up with you saying that? Something like that. But even that may be too much. It's kind of like basically getting into it with people that try to trip you up over your words, or people that think they know everything and that are smart and probably want to overanalyze the situation and think that they know you and tell you how you should feel, or tell you, well, this is what this is, when it's not, and they read into the situation wrong. Dealing with people like this can be very difficult, and it's best not to get riled up. It's best not to give them a reaction. You just state what you said. You said, hey, maybe think about things before you say them. All that other stuff they try to say, all the analytical jargon, all this other stuff, they try to talk to you like they're giving a presentation at Harvard University, or they're trying to be all this other stuff, does not matter. They, or whatever, they try to say that they're being logical. It's like, no, you're not. You're not being logical, because if you were in the same boat or in a similar situation, you wouldn't like it. You would want someone to listen to you. So just be careful, guys. Peace.
Hey,
Okay.
when is it appropriate to say, you know what, this ain't really going nowhere? It's time for me to just we're having a discussion about something that maybe we are on opposite ends of the spectrum for. You see it one way, I see it another way. We're not really creating the right space for dialogue to ensue. Correct. How do you disengage? When is too far, or when is there a limitation on it? Like, being in this position many times, I felt like, well, we both want something out of this, but we're not getting to the destination because we're constantly detouring, constantly. What's your like initial thoughts on what she said and this particular matter in general?
Oh wow, where do we begin to unpack? She kind of had me when she first started, and with being dismissive. The video started out by saying, basically, as a person that's easily triggered, or as a person that's basically what it sounds like is defensive-ness, and her struggling letting go of perceived slights or criticism, right? Because she said, as a person that's used to taking that information or being offended by it, and kind of formulating her own opinion, it also kind of identifies with like a defensive personality or high defensives. And you got to be careful, because in that situation, you can easily project yourself onto other people. And I'm kind of choosing my words kind of loosely here because it wasn't a lot of context to go off of. But the way she was just so dismissive, I think that's what the issue was identifying that. It's like not even being open-minded or the willingness to be open-minded. She just kind of started out by saying, hey, if you don't want to hear this, if you don't want to deal with that, then pivot this way, kind of go a different direction. So I would just say, maybe replay that first part again, maybe the first 5 seconds again, so we can get the words that she used, so that way we can use them correctly, because I don't want to misquote anything she said.
All right, hold up 1 second. I'm gonna bring it back up here on the screen.
So sometimes you're learning that everything doesn't need a response. And unfortunately, from someone who gets very defensive, someone who has trouble letting things go, that is
Pause it there.
hard.
So she she started out by saying from her perspective, that gets very defensive or hard to let things go. So like I said, from the perceived slight criticisms, she's naturally on the defensive, and that's typically triggered by insecurity and low self-esteem, or like a heightened sensitivity to feedback. So maybe being over criticized, and that's something that we fall victim to in our communities, because it's just simply on the strength of how we grew up, right? Cracking jokes on each other, perhaps being the butt of somebody's jokes, or in a circle, in a group of somebody's jokes, and then maybe kind of self-isolating and doing your own thing. So those are some of the things you gotta kind of be aware of. So I would just identify with that first, is how she kind of started that statement out with the disclaimer. What about you?
Now that you bring that up, when I originally heard her say it, I thought that she was speaking on the behalf of the other party. That's why I prefaced it with, well, when do you say, all right, we're not really getting nowhere, let me go ahead and pull back? Because I'm assuming that when she's speaking about this, she is tying this to someone with that actual self-defensive nature. If this is applicable to her, then I guess it still doesn't really change anything either. I don't like. Well, let me rephrase that. Someone who is conditioned to be on the defensive constantly, they don't understand how detrimental that is to getting to a actual conclusion. Like you're cheating the experience. If I'm coming into this authentically looking to address something that I feel like is important, and you don't have the emotional discipline to facilitate what I am offering to this discussion, then what I'm going to end up doing is falling back, because we're not going to really get anywhere. Defensive people like that, they tend to make it very difficult for their friends, family, loved ones in general. They make it very hard for them to articulate themselves. It makes it very difficult for them to be transparent and vulnerable. And I think for that, they don't really understand. Maybe that's just their way of protecting themselves. I could be wrong, but you're not doing any more good than you think you are. This is actually very damaging, very damaging. How can you tell me that you care when I'm bringing something to you that I feel like is important, and you're being dismissive of it. Makes no sense to me. All I'm going to be met with is retorts, or, well, let me ask you a question, or what if, or remember when you said this, or remember when you did this, or they get hostile, or their voice elevates into unnecessary levels of anger. For what reason? Are you upset because something I said triggered you, or are you just not capable of being in this type of environment with someone who understands how important conversations are?
No, I think those are all great points, and like you said, they may not be able to be capable. They also might not even be aware either. So I think one of the things that we tend to talk about a lot, and I don't think you can talk about and emphasize enough, is just communication. And then also, one of the things that we see this generation, they kind of run to the internet. So perhaps if there were some friends or accountability partners, and it might be a trust issue, it might be because of the defensive mechanisms and the heightened sensitivity and the sense of low self-esteem, that it may be more comfortable running to the internet, because once you get on that screen, it's just you and the screen. Nobody's there to tell you, hey, that's a bad idea. Hey, stop, pause, maybe think about that. Because one of the things that a lot of people don't do is think before they speak. And so you don't have to think before you go live either. It's not like you're practicing and doing a dry run. Unless it's performance-based, then it typically is based off emotion. So it's, whatever the action is, the cause and then the effect is running to tell God and the country on the internet. And then hence the dopamine's coming in from the likes, the comments, and different things of that nature. So I definitely think that's something that's very prevalent today in society. But I also think it's something that, we as a people need to just kind of take the grips, do a little self-awareness, maybe start holding ourselves a little bit more accountable versus running out to blame everybody else. That seems to be something that is more and more prevalent every day. Is instead of looking at the person in the mirror, they're looking at the person on the other end of that internet and searching for some type of sequence, acceptance, validation from somebody that's out there. And some of the things that you can do to kind of reflect, and if you figure, because I'm sure there's a lot of people kind of watching online, is, you want to reflect on the emotional responses and recognize the automatic defensive reactions. And I think that's what some things is people don't realize, because they don't like the feedback. They don't like to be told, hey, when the defensive mechanisms or the reactions kick in. So it's kind of hard to give somebody feedback who's on the defense all the time. So they're not self-evaluating, but they're not even open to any constructive criticism, which today is look like, I guess, what they call hate, or, all this other stuff that they call online. So it used to be a time where you can give somebody constructive feedback, and they would listen, but now it's just considered hate. And, you don't want to see them be lit, or whatever the terminology is these days.
It's very immature, and it's unfortunate that this isn't something that is actually taught. You would have an uncle, you would have somebody in your family that would sit down with you, throw a ball around. Maybe you have tea time with your niece or your daughter or something. And you would have like these heart-to-hearts. They're not extremely advanced to where you're saying, hey, when you get 25 years old, you're going to do this. But they kind of ease you into it, so to speak. Like, we lie to our youth, and we tell them, well, the world is not going to be kind to you, but you don't really say why. We're trying to prepare you to be on your own, but we don't tell you why. Like, you're not really giving demonstrations. You're kind of giving like these fluffer type of thinking pieces that really don't leave my imagination to, okay, that sounds graphic. That doesn't sound very nice. That sounds like this person has issues. Maybe I need to think about some things here. You grow up around somebody who is constantly angry, or they have that specific attribute that we're identifying or speaking on now, it is probably going to be extremely hard for them to come out of that, or to even acknowledge that this is a problem. I've had conversations where folks will say, I know I got a hot temper. I know this, I know that. Well, you know it, but you're not really proactively doing anything to address it. Like, so
Right.
just because you know it, what that mean to me? You know something, okay. I've even gone as far as to say, all right, look, I'm willing to take 30 minutes to an hour, and let's target that. Let's talk about why you have a hard time identifying or accepting the fact that you are easily triggered. Let's talk about the root of the problem. Let's figure out how we can run some practice runs around this. I'll help spot you on where things went wrong in the context of whatever is going on in the discussions. We'll set up a fixed scenario. You'll come back with your retort. We get into it. I'll say, look, all right, stop, pause. All right, I never ever seem to get that far with people like that, though. And you're not going to get a lot of men and women that's willing to do that. Like, literally, they're trying to help you out. You're just not going to see it.
When you say do that, you mean willing to help you out or willing to participate?
Willing to be the guinea pig, so to speak. So if I've known you for 5-10 years, I already know your triggers and all that. So I'm sitting here saying, all right, I care about you, so I'm gonna try to help you out with this. I'm gonna try to help you strengthen that specific muscle. Like, if you're going to the gym and you got somebody that spots you, I'm gonna try to help you out with this specific thing, because you can't keep going out here crashing out and expecting different results. So as your friend or whatever, let me see if I can try to help you out with this. But I'm not sure most people or many people are open to that. But then, like, you can go to a therapist. I have no problem with that. But I don't know. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's plenty of steps before you get to the therapist. I think, you know what I mean? If you're that person's friend or spouse or whatever, significant other, or just accountability partner, whatever you want to call it, I think you identify those steps along the way. And again, it just goes back to communication. I think, try to provide some options, some solutions. Ask them if they're even aware of what's going on. And then maybe possibly take notes, provide a journal, or, the old cliche, have an intervention, have a circle of friends or a circle of trust to try to bring those things to them. And I mean, you got to be coachable. You got to want to change. And then the first step in any 12-step program is you got to identify the problem, right? So once you identify the problem, and then as long as you're coachable and you're not bringing not problems to solutions, but you are bringing solutions to problems, if that makes sense, then I think it's a way of going about doing it. I mean, because as simple as, mindfulness practices, they encourage reflection on emotional responses. Those are typical CBT, techniques, cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. As simple as breathing. Focus on your breath for a few minutes, observing each inhalation. And if they're willing to do little small things like that, like right now, we both sitting here, and whoever's watching, if you sit there and just relax your body and think about what's the most tense part of your body right now, you know what I mean? Just literally think about it. Why is your body so tense? So little things like that, little small things, I think that you can kind of chip away with. But it also boils down to when you identify that problem, because it also might be too late. You know what I mean? Where those type of things might not happen. So yeah, the accountability partner, contacting a coach like me, Coach Trail, reallive.org, because buzzword being therapy, but a lot of times people want to speak to somebody that looks like them, that's a little bit more relatable to them. They assume that they have similar backgrounds, and a lot of us ain't really doing therapy. There's a lot more that are being certified and are in those places, but I think there are other practices out there that we can open up to people's eyes, and start identifying those things earlier in life. Just think about, these young folks when they play AAU sports, basketball, whatever the case may be, they have coaches, they have mentors. So we start training those coaches and those people in those spaces, whether it be young kids doing karate or gymnastics, but you start putting more certified and more educated people in those areas to identify those things, we can kind of catch them along the stages. And then not necessarily at the point where they're in their mid-30s or late 30s, and you're trying to convince somebody that something they've been doing for over 25 years has possibly been the wrong patterns. Because if they've been doing the wrong patterns, or the patterns that weren't necessarily successful, not to call them wrong, but that lead them to the point where they are at their 30s, then think of how hard it is going to be to reestablish good patterns. You know what I mean? That's like trying to tell somebody to stop smoking or drinking coffee after all these years of smoking. They just say, why don't you let me smoke inside versus you stop smoking. But I mean, I'm just saying the whole point is those patterns for a long period of time and identifying and trying to shift. So I think we just need to start looking for those patterns in earlier stages within our community. And I think we can probably make a difference.
I agree. And to be fair, like, this stuff takes a lot of patience. You got to have a lot of patience. Nothing, how can I say this? It's individual. Your growth through the change is going to be different than mine's or his or hers. It might take them a month. It might take you a week. It all really varies. Your willingness, how tired you are, your experience. Have you gone through enough that's going to make you sit still? The older I get,
Go ahead, my bad. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the older I get, I can't speak for nobody else. The older I get, the more receptive I am to the possibilities of being wrong, or the more open I become to listening or hearing. I want to hear more. I want the chastisement. I have no problem with correction. I have no problem with someone saying, look, you need to work on this or you need to work on that. Because, put it this way, it's one thing to just go at somebody and tell them this. It's another thing to talk at them, but you're explaining why this is what it is.
Yeah, a lot of times it's not the message, it's the messenger. Sometimes people already prejudging, have a preconceived, maybe even a interaction with the person that they can only, that's tangible, that was negative, right? For some reason, because of that defensive posturing, that's what they're holding on to, not necessarily saying all the other good things. So those are things you have to. So like reverting back to her video, she said people think they know everything. Well, typically somebody who says something like that is somebody who's not well versed in a topic or a subject, and the defense mechanism is say, "Hey, you think you know everything?" Because of most people these days, especially being online. Well, let me rephrase that. Most people have good intentions, and they're going to try to educate with the information, and it's not boasting and bragging and necessarily say, "I'm telling you this," or "I'm trying to educate you this," just because I think I know everything. So, and it can be viewed from both sides, and it's all about perspective and points of view. But again, if that's the first thing you naturally tend to gravitate to, it's more of a defense mechanism. And then they aren't being logical. If they were in the same boat, they will feel. Well, now you're projecting how somebody else would feel, and by not calling them logical because they don't agree with something that in your perspective, after you already said you're defensive and combative, basically. So I think it's again, it's just that projection and the lack of self-awareness and self-respect for oneself to project that out towards other people.
You have a good point. I never looked at somebody giving information as a detriment to a discussion. If you come up here and you speak on something that all right, how can I put this? If we're all up here with some knowledge of a similar topic, but you have more information to divulge on that particular subject than I do, why would I be upset with that? Why would that trigger me? All I want is the truth. Now, that can always be tested until you do the research to discover whether or not it's accurate or not. That's all you have to do is do your own research. Whether or not the person is right or wrong, that's not the point. The point is we're here in this space, me and the other person. We're trying to discuss something of a similar interest, and we want to arrive at a destination that is convenient for us both, whether or not we're comfortable with it or we're not comfortable with it.
Yeah, so it depends, right? So, everybody's raised different. So, you can go the whole nature versus nurture. You can go, some people are now saying they were raised on survival. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can use out there, but what the reality is everybody doesn't grow at the same time. So, you can feel that way and say that's your perspective or point of view, but everybody's road doesn't give them the same experience. We might all get to the same place at the same time, but some people may have embarked on a rougher journey than others have. Some people may have went through more trials and tribulations than others have. Some people, as they call it nowadays, pretty privilege, princess parking. It's got so many different things when something works out for you, versus you putting the effort into it. It's everybody's being gifted something. It's not that, hey, I put the hard work in it and these are the results that I'm giving. It's like, oh shit, I got lucky. I got this winner. You know what I mean? It's one of those type things. So the mindset has changed. It's not necessarily that you put the hard work into it and then you receive the results that you get. It's just, I'm going to go out here on a whim and hope that I get lucky every single time that I go out here. And then when I don't, the universe is against me. You guys don't want to see me win. It's no longer that hard work and that effort to put into it. So if you're not putting effort into it, somebody's giving you constructive criticism and feedback. I didn't ask for that. I didn't do anything to want that constructive criticism and feedback. You should be giving me the answers. Nobody asked you to give me your opinion. You know what I mean? And that's more or less what it comes off to these days. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but that's more or less how it comes across these days.
Let me ask you a question. Is this somebody, because you spoke about being able to, and I'm trying not to slaughter this. You found a way to de-escalate a possible situation with someone with similar habits. Do you find that it's a opportunity or a waste of time having conversations with folks that are not where everyone else is in the entire dialogue?
So for me, the selfish answer is I take it as an opportunity. And I say selfish because just based on challenges. And then the personal, the self gratification, and it makes me happy to help somebody. So the frustration comes into play if they don't want to help themselves and they're not seeing um, the olive branch being extended, if that makes any sense. So, but within everything, it has to be an expiration date. It has to be a time limit because you the law of the lid. You can try to pour into somebody as much as you want, but if that lid is closed and it's not receiving what you're pouring, then at some point you're gonna run out of things to pour. And if everything that you're trying to pour into them is just being wasted, at some point you got to do some self-evaluating and say, hey, look, again, like I said, it could be the messenger or it could be the message. But that's when you pivot and change. Hey, look, I tried the best that I can. The selfish piece would continue to try and say, maybe point the finger and say, hey, look, I tried, you failed. I did this, you failed. Or you can just say, you know what, I did try. I had good intentions. Now let's pivot and find another direction because this isn't working. So you have to be able to identify when it's not working. And I think that's the biggest issue people have, being a sender and a receiver, is they identify it's not working, so they don't care enough to try it anymore. And the other one doesn't care enough to try to receive anymore. And then it just stops. The accountability piece, or calling somebody, a subject matter expert or coach or anybody other than yourself, to remove yourself, take the emotion out of it, remove yourself out of the situation and say, hey, I might have reached my ceiling and there's nothing else I can do to help this individual or help this project or whatever it is, because it can be anything. And once you realize there's nothing else you can do to pour into it, then you need to redirect those resources and find another way if you still care. But if you don't, then you can just, it's completely up to you because everybody's different. But if the objective is to help that individual, then you should try to find other resources. And then that's when you remove the ego and say it's not you. You can't fix everything and you've exhausted your resources, and then find another avenue or source of guidance, whether that be a crisis line, whether it be a website, but just to keep trying to provide that information. And that's what it is, because you don't know what you don't know. And obviously the person on the other end, they don't know because they're going through it in real time and you're watching from the outside.
If you got 5, 6, 7 people telling you the same thing and you still don't receive it, that is definitely a problem. I feel bad for you, but at the same token, there's a limitation and there's a season for everything.
Well, yeah, don't feel bad. Just find somebody who's more qualified. You know what I mean? Take the feeling out of it. Because feeling bad ain't gonna help nobody. Because again, you don't know what people, you're meeting them where you're meeting them, where the rubber meets the road. You don't know what their past and their background and what they've gone through. And then if there's not full transparency, then there's nothing. You can only expect to do what you can. You don't know anything until you take the cover off. If you're working on a car, you gotta lift the hood to see what's underneath there before you can diagnose it. You know what I mean? You just can't say, hey, I can fix anything or I can fix any situation. And that's why you got plumbers. You don't call an electrician to fix the pipes. You know what I mean? You get in there, you assess it, and now you call who that person is. And that's what we lack. Instead of trying to fix all the problems, we just need to know and have a resource, a Rolodex, back in the days. And let's call this person to fix this problem. Let's call this person. You tried to troubleshoot, it didn't work. Now call somebody and get the right person there to do an assessment and then fix the problem, instead of trying to do something beyond your capabilities, which then affects you emotionally and that other individual emotionally. And now you're adding to the problem. You're enabling, you're not being a problem solver.
You said earlier that this is well, let me reframe it. Do you believe people adjust to who they respect and don't respect in terms of their attitude and their behaviors in general?
Absolutely. Men, women, everybody does. And that's where the ego comes into play. That's why, when you sit back and you walk into a room and everybody watches, and then naturally people walk into a room, they tend to gravitate towards people that they're more like, right? And then somebody comes in, an outlier, who wants to be the alpha male or female, whatever the case it is. And, you see people start to interact and expose those personalities. And that's what the disc comes into play, is because disc helps you identifies the personality. The dominant personality is D. I influencing. You got the S and you got the C. So that allows you to see who comes in, who's doing what, and you can identify them and spot them out. And so then you can move and you can navigate throughout the room accordingly, or you can step back, allow the situations to develop, and then provide guidance from the back. Just depending on what the situation is, but absolutely, you got people, they naturally adapt to anybody that they're around.
So if me looking at it like that, that means that if you are picking and choosing who you want to be receptive to, do you actually have more control than you're putting off? And it's just an excuse for you to be an asshole or just be dismissive, depending on who it is?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what people do. They find an angle and work it to their advantage. Look at online right now, the way the algorithms are set up. People are naturally gravitating towards people that they want to be in a social connection with. I want to go to the party with these people. I want to only talk to people who agree with me about these certain terms. If somebody's giving me the feedback that we talked about earlier, the construction criticism, they cut them off. This is the cutoff culture. You know what I mean? It's not the problem solving culture. I'm just going to find a group of people that think like I do, and we're all in the room, and we'll just keep telling each other how great we are. And we have a lot of followers online, but it might not necessarily translate to being the same in real life.
That's crazy as shit. So the whole that, because it's like my nigga, I know you. Like, you are not that person. You're actually sad. You're actually depressed for real. But
you sound surprised though. Why you sound surprised?
I'm not. It's not that I'm surprised. It's just like, of all the people that you should be real with and authentic with, you would think it would be the person that is actually putting up with your shit versus someone that's on the outside who don't really know you at all, but you trying to fit.
Man, if that's the case, everybody's relationships would be great if that was the case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You wouldn't have men talking to their wives or girlfriends talking about how you act when you're around your friends. Vice versa. You wouldn't have women saying that to men. Oh, you only act this way around Tommy and those guys. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. When people go away to college, they go away to college and nobody knows who they were back home, and now they put on a completely different persona. You know what I'm saying? Same thing in the military, jail, anything that people go remotely and relocate themselves to another place, they leave that other personality behind and they adapt a new personality and lifestyle. I mean, that's what we see every day, especially with rap and all this other culture stuff that people walk around glorifying. You know what I'm saying? Think about the music you listen to. You listen to a rap artist, he'll say, man, it took my whole life to make this album. Well, it took your whole life to make 45 minutes worth of music. You know what I'm saying? And half the shit is trash. But then you'll say, well, okay, it took you 30 years to make 45 years worth of music. Couldn't you just got with somebody who's a little bit better at writing than you, and then you guys could have put together a well-put story? You know what I'm saying? I mean, just little things like that. People that write books, they say the same thing. So just using that as a reference point, not necessarily saying that it's always like that, but you'll hear people say that. So I mean, it's not that far-fetched, man.
I don't want to talk with someone at this particular point in time that's not going to be available emotionally or spiritually or mentally. If you're one of those people who you haven't come out of that phase in life, or you're stuck there and you refuse progression, I'm not mad at you, but I understand what's going to come with that. I know what happens when you still move like that. It's not pretty. It might be cute for a while. It ain't going to last forever. I would prefer to just be around like-minded folks. We can agree and disagree and still unravel the mysteries of whatever the topic is and still enjoy our time doing so. You are spending more of your time being combative and confrontational, defeating the whole purpose of even opening up a exchange of words. Nobody wants to be around that. That's very unsettling and unpleasant. Unless you up for the challenge and you're just willing to see how far you can go with it. Like it's a science project. I don't want I don't want to treat you like a science project. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, so I would say definitely not something that you should do just in your day-to-day. If you encounter somebody like that, then you should definitely refer them to a subject matter expert or a professional versus giving one skewed views on things, because everybody goes through things, so their views are going to be based on their relationships and their experiences versus a professional that can look at it from a neutral standpoint. So that's what we should be doing as a community out there, because there's a lot of folks that's out there that thinks like that, especially right now in a time with government layoffs and shutdowns. People are starting to look at each other, size each other up. I mean, it's getting hard out here. So it's getting harder to help out here, and it's getting easier to hate. So that's something we definitely should take a look into, is easing up off the throttle and just trying to slow down the tempo a little bit. Help somebody out, because we all know people that are going through it, and they may be difficult. And some of us are built tougher than others, so some of us have thicker skin than others. But you just got to have a cutoff point. So at the end of the day, it's always good to try to help someone and just point them in the right direction, but they got to want help as well. But, just versus just, shutting them off and tell them to kind of figure it out on their own.
How important, my final thoughts. How important is conversation? Why is it important? And why is transparency necessary? And I'm asking this question in 3 parts, specifically for people who are going to watch back or are watching now. And you have a group of folks who don't really understand what is required for this to happen with full functioning availability on both sides. What do you say to somebody who doesn't really understand why it's necessary to have these type of interactions?
Why it's important to communicate? Well, so you want to cultivate an open mindset. You want to encourage people to practice reflective questioning. How might others feel in this situation? And if you ask a question as simple as that, is how might this person feel if they're trying to communicate? And there's 1, resistance. 2, I'm not asking the questions to make sure I understand the questions, because I may feel intimidated by the individual because they may be a little bit more smarter than me. Their personality may be a little bit more dominant. And that happens every day in the workplace. Again, going back to DISC, it's important to communicate because teamwork is important. I mean, no matter how far, no matter what you do, you can't do anything alone. You need a team behind you. So just depending on what you consider to be a team is completely up to you. Team of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, completely up to you. But that takes effective communication. In order to be a great leader, you got to be a great follower. In order to understand those things, it takes communication. Making sure that you understand the message and making sure that you can deliver the message. Because a lot of times people can't deliver the message. They may have great ideas, but sometimes they just can't convey it. And the person on the other side, they aren't receiving that. And then you have to be okay with identifying with that because sometimes ego gets in the way. Like, I just can't get through to these folks. You mind saying something? It's as simple as that. Or maybe going to a support group and identifying both of you, the issues and the problems. If you feel like you're at the same level, you just can't, break those barriers as far as for communication. Because it can go from anything from sports to competitiveness. It can be, in a job. One person can be in charge of things at work and come home and they can just not want to do anything anymore. Well, that's not being a good team player. Because if you were at work and you were giving 110%, and then now you come home and giving me 55%, and you still expecting the same productivity level to reciprocate back to you, then we got a problem. And you got to be able to identify that. You can't want to be employee of the month at work and then come home and give 10%. And that goes on both ends, right? So you have to be and that's why transparency is important. Because if you don't tell that individual that, but you say you go out and you have other vices, whether it be drinking, gambling, or whatever the case may be, thrifting, and that's taken away from that productivity and that quality time that could be given where it's better needed, how is the other person supposed to know? So again, it goes back to the communication piece. Because again, if you're at work, you're attentive. We like to think you are. We're obviously using the assumption that you're not going to work and you just you're not productive. Because some people probably say, I don't do shit at work, but you're not the people that we're talking about. We're talking about people that go to work and they're outstanding employees and they give their all. And then they may want to come home and slack off a little bit. And then it's just not fair to the other individual because that's the team right there, right? So it all boils down to it's about balance. Everything in life is about balance. You got to give, you got to take, you got to push, you got to pull. But at the end of the day, transparency, communication, and balance. And that's a good launching point from there.
To conclude and wrap this up, no, everything doesn't need a response. Some people are rage baiting you. Some people are just trying to trigger you into something to get you out of your character. Some people are just doing it because they get a rise out of it. It's enjoyable. It's entertainment for them. I don't know if that was her ultimate message. A part of me believed that's what she was referring to. But if that's the case also, nah, you don't have to respond to everything. Especially trolls, especially emotionally unavailable people that throw everything back in your face just to piss you off because you said something that they didn't like. There's some things that you don't have to engage in. That shows the level of maturity between you and the other person. There's folks that's 50, 60 years old that still act like they children. We don't have. Go ahead.
No, I was just like you just said. Some people. One of the things that people have the issue with is they believe that their personal experiences are universally applicable to everybody, and I think that's the biggest issue.
It's hard to separate that it's like, well, I'm living in this all the time. So if you don't know how to compartmentalize that, yeah, that's no bueno. Because everybody's not gonna respond to you the same way. You don't really understand. The world don't owe us nothing. People can be compassionate if they want to, but they don't have to be. They can
Right.
care, or they can just tell you to fuck off. You know, so be self-aware. Stop getting so sensitive. You know you are on some BS. You know you got issues. You know you need to work on some stuff. We all got to work on something. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely different times out here. I won't tell anybody how to feel. Just say that just keep in mind to express how you feel. And if you don't like it, and if you can, find a way to express yourself in the treat people as you want to be treated. And if that doesn't work, then you probably shouldn't communicate with that individual, because there's a lack of respect on one or both sides. So definitely express how you feel. Let that person know, and especially if you feel disrespected, and know your value and your worth. Because once you know your value and your worth, you'll start to do more, and you'll start to demand more, and you'll start to take less disrespect. And that's definitely something people should know, is their value and their worth. And that's the problem also. A lot of people don't know their value or their worth. And so that's why it's important to surround yourself around positive, like-minded folks who are looking to make a difference. And, they also use checks and balances, because you can be around people that think like you, but it doesn't mean anything if nobody's holding each other accountable. So checks and balances, and, find your tribe.
Well said. Well said. Look, man. I thank you for pulling up tonight. The gems, always. I'm listening. I'm still trying to get my stuff in order too. Like, I'm always in the process of improving or making improvements. So anytime I get somebody to put wisdom in my ear, I'm definitely going to listen to it.
Hey, man, appreciate you inviting me on the show, man. It's been a great time. Definitely a great experience. Learn something myself. If you're not learning something every day, then what you doing, man.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Oh, we're going to spin back on that one. You just made me think of something. I'm gonna jot that one down before I forget it. But yeah, man, we about to get up out of here. Shout out to everybody who pulled up. Everybody, I mean everybody, even the ones I banned. You know what I'm saying?
I just saw that. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I don't play around with y'all stupid motherfuckers, man. I'm not entertaining you. I'm not having conversations with you. I'm just hitting the button. Period. But I appreciate you for stopping in anyway. God bless you.
Hey, man. Yeah.
Chef, salutes. We'll be back Thursday. Tomorrow is Sydney's segment. I'm not gonna do a morning show tomorrow. I'm gonna chill out and get some recording in, but I will be back Thursday. That's gonna be a good one. And yeah, bro, great show. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. And to everybody in the building, I hope you have a blessed night as well.
Appreciate you. You too, bro.
All right, we out.